Oh.
I was just going to see at one point, can we get a table now so that I can set stuff up?
Yes. Guys, can you give us a hand? We just need to set up this table. Go ahead and just set it up now. Get it all going. Okay, good. Okay, guys, grab a chair. We don't have an actual round table, sadly. So just gather towards the front of the room. Perfect. Okay, Daniel, Anil, you guys in or you out? Okay, great. I'm very glad to hear that. Okay. Sasha, is there any pizza left? Fantastic. Go for it. As Christian said, if you don't eat it, it just gets binned, and that would just be a terrible, terrible shame. The world would be a terrible place if all that pizza got ruined. So, okay, DX3. This is just something that we have been chipping away. It's been an informal group of, I would say, 10 people, a core team of 3. I'll let Ian, Stu introduce themselves in a moment, and myself. As the core team, we've been chipping away at this project, just thinking, what the hell are we trying to do here? What are the opportunities? Driven by, I suppose, a sort of a crazy non-technical vision. And a lot of it has just been us having discussions, me trying to say, the thing, and you're like, Simon, I don't understand what you're talking about. Okay, I'll go off and I'll write a white paper and I'll show it to you. And you're like, okay, I kind of understand, but this is not technical. We need, this. And I'm like, I don't do technical. So it's been a process of you trying to translate all these sort of crazy concepts to actually shoehorn all those, because what we're trying to build is a very, very, very audacious, extremely complex ecosystem with lots of moving parts, and just drilling it down to say, look, let's just build a simple MVP in the form of a proof of concept based on those 3 things, the convergence trend, this mega trend of IoT, blockchain, and machine intelligence. If one of those components is missing, DX3 can't exist. This is the thing. That's where the magic happens. It's that sort of Venn diagram. So, and the other thing in terms of framing, what we're building is not for today. So don't say, that can't be done. Yeah, I get it. Today, can't be done. Because Ethereum. Because 5G. Because AI, embedded in the edge. AI, neural networks, they have to be tethered to a server in the cloud, gigantic server in the cloud. But just imagine, in a few years, that server in the cloud is going to be shrunk down to a little chip the size of my thumbnail. And it's going to be embedded in a drone, a tractor, a mining truck, a subsea autonomous drone. Going to happen. When? That's the big question. That's the big leap. So the machine web. Now, this is where I start aging myself. Who was around when Web 1.0 suddenly popped up on our radar? So we're talking sort of 90... when did Tim Berners-Lee and Champaign University of Illinois launch Spry Mosaic, the very first web browser? 95? 96? Okay, raise your hand if you were there and you were sitting in front of a dial-up modem thinking, this is not a fad, this is going to change the world. Okay, there you go. That's Web 1.0. Now, millennials today is like, but the web's always been the way. It's like, no, the web was a very different web when we got started. And I'll come to that in a moment. Web 2.0 happened around the turn of the millennium. It was Web 2.0 was the ability to interact with web pages. And we suddenly started getting broadband, super fast internet connectivity compared to a 56K modem, let me tell you. Like seriously fast, mind-bogglingly quick. 1 megabit per second line in mid-95, that just didn't exist unless you were BT. That's the only sort of corporation in the UK that had that kind of bandwidth. So anyhow, Web 2.0 came along, JavaScript, I guess, the technically minded. Suddenly you could retweet, comment, blog. Web 1.0 was static. You visited websites, you could scroll up and down, you could click on hyperlinks, but that was it. That's as good as it got. So Web 2.0 was the people web, people-centric web, the social web. It's about us, humans interacting. Now that is about to change. I think Web 2.5 was probably the semantic web where AI started to predict, your wants, predict, that's kind of Netflix recommendations and Spotify. That's the predictive web, the semantic, predictive, contextual web. That's incremental. I think that's just a kind of an incremental improvement on Web 2. That's not Web 3.0. This is where I start getting a bit contentious. Pal, that live stream is definitely not live streaming. It's not live streaming, it's videoing. Okay, good. Right. Now, people like Gavin, who developed the Web 3 framework, and others, Vitalik and so on, Web 3 is a framework. It's a decentralized framework, but it looks more like a kind of a walled garden to me than a light protocol like HTTP and TCP/IP. Web 3 is not Web 3.0. It's not the third iteration of the open web. So in a sense, calling it Web 3 was a little bit of a leap, I think. And I get into trouble because people say, Simon, it's not called Web 3.0, it's called Web 3. I'm like, we're not exactly talking about the same thing. I'm talking about Web 3.0 as more of a concept. It's where the internet is about to transition into. And the most striking difference about Web 2.0 and about Web 3.0 is, firstly, it's going to be decentralized. So it's no longer going to be controlled by 5 corporations, because we're pivoting towards decentralized storage, decentralized protocols, which I think is a good thing. And also, it's going to become a machine-centric web. You think there are a lot of machines connected to the internet right now? Well, there are. And there are a lot more machines connected to the internet than people. And very soon there'll be far, far, far more machines connected to the internet than people. And what's more, they're going to become autonomous. Not sentient. They're not going to become, start thinking about, their purpose and mission in life. They're frigging machines, okay? They just run on a decision tree. They're just simple algorithms. So this thing of them becoming self-aware, that's not even part of this discussion. They're machines, they're objects, and they're there to do our bidding. And we as humans are going to run them into the ground to create wealth for us, to build schools, hospitals, and all. That's all the fluffy stuff that really is not really part of this discussion today. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about Web 3.0. It's not entirely the machine web. There are going to be people and humans and stuff going on. That's why crypto is for humans. It's nice to pay for things with crypto. It's cool. I do it. But that's incremental. The revolutionary thing is the ability for machines to interact using this technology. So I hope we understand what we mean by the machine web. Now, the machine economy will result from this. Okay, machines will generate trillions of dollars worth of value for their human owners, and they themselves will become market participants. Machines will be tethered to digital wallets and will generate revenue by providing services to humans and other machines. They will pay for products and services such as energy, maintenance, and replacement parts. It's not fantasy, that's actually happening. Technologically, it can be done. And these guys are going to show you how. So what is DX3? Okay, this is where we start getting into the nitty-gritty now. DX3 is a decentralized ecosystem that will facilitate autonomous machine-to-machine interactions and transactions. And DX3, I like to call an operating system. These guys don't like that. They're like, Simon, it's not an operating system. Stop saying it's an operating system. It's not an operating system. I think it is kind of an operating system. So I'm going to break it down. Anatomy of DX3. Layer 1. That's your base protocol. That is the equivalent of HTTP, TCP/IP. And we don't want that to be a fat protocol. We want it to be as skinny as fuck. And Ethereum are making it bloated and are making it fat and trying to grab all the value and the complexity and the functionality. Bug out. That's not your job. You just deliver. That's why Bitcoin is beautiful in its simplicity, because it only just does one thing, and it does it bloody well. Ethereum is trying to be this global supercomputer. You can run dApps and storage, distributed storage, everything. That's freaking CompuServe. That's not the open web. That is CompuServe. It'll sound familiar. I'm going to run a video for you in a moment. So, okay, these are just analogies, because we've got an analogy problem. So layer 1 protocol is your base protocol, your thin protocol. If you're using the railway tracks, it's the tracks that run the trains. It's the internet itself. It's the Android operating system. Layer 2 is the service layer. It's the network. It's the medium protocol that sits in between. It's the carriages that run on the rail networks. And you can't run a rail business until you've laid the rails, right? The infrastructure. And so some examples of base layer 1 protocols are Ethereum, EOS, Cardano, Algorand, Tron. They're open source, they're public, they're permissionless by default. And that's good. We like all those things. But we don't want them to be fat. We want them to be thin and just do one thing very, very, very well and very efficiently. Layer 2, like I said, is DX3. It's the service, the network. It's the carriages that run on the rails. If you like, it's the web, it's the Play Store. Layer 3, we're nowhere near layer 3 yet. That's the DApp layer. That's the FAT protocol. That is where I think the value lies. And that's going to be proprietary. There's no open source here. These dApps, these distributed apps, are where you build gazillion-dollar businesses. And quite rightly. You know, I'm not entirely a socialist. That's the sort of the capitalist layer. That's where you're out for your own sort of personal gain. But the problem is a lot of these Ethereum-based ecosystems that are being built on layer 1 protocols, they're trying to own the layer 2 protocol and tax everyone who participates. Then we're back to square one, where we've got one company owning the distribution layer. It doesn't matter whether they're in the oil and gas industry, whether they're in a consumer-facing protocol. If you're building an ecosystem and you're taxing every participant that will eventually be contributing the dApps and the wealth, well, you're screwing over your own customer base. And people are not going to fall into that trap. You know, Amazon have done it, Google have done it, Apple have done it. We're not going to make the same mistake of helping them get rich at our expense. So that's why DX3, within this very specific focused industrial machine-to-machine environment, this is never going to be open, it's never going to be permissionless, it's always going to be an enterprise permissioned distributed ledger technology focused on oil and gas, mining, agri-tech, possibly construction, heavy industry, because that's the first place where this revolution